How are you doing, everybody? Welcome into the SFS channel. In this video, we'll be pointing out some of my must-start wide receivers here, 5 of them, in fact, for Week 6 fantasy football that I love starting here. I think have some pretty solid outlooks for this week's games and should deliver very quality numbers for our fantasy teams this week. So if you're new around here, drop down, smash that like button, click the subscribe button as well, and turn the bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content. We're dropping multiple podcast-style episodes here on YouTube 5 days a week, sometimes extra bonus content on the weekends as well, so you don't want to miss out on any of that. With that being said, though, let's dive into today's episode. All right, as always, I'll be diving in and breaking down our picks from Week 5, the week previous to this episode. So we went 50%. We picked 5 players, but we had to remove Rashad Bateman because of the fact that the foot issue that we outlined in that episode 48 hours later ended up ruling him out of the game actually quite early in the week. So a moral victory for me, I guess. Devin Duvernay in that same matchup ended up coming out and having himself a 9.5 point game in half PPR scoring. Our benchmark here is 10 points. So, of course, was looking for an extra half point there, but again, he wasn't in the video. So, more of a moral victory there. And then we've got Chris Olave. Thank God he ended up hitting. It was a very, very close situation. We kind of got bailed out. He was concussed like a minute and a half into the third quarter of the game, so a whole half of football yet to be played. He had a 13-point outing and ended up having to leave because of the concussion protocol adjustments for the league here, but we did get bailed out because the play he was injured on was a touchdown reception where he just kind of got squished beneath the defensive back and hit his head pretty hard on the turf. And then Hollywood Brown had himself another 17-plus point day in half PPR. Our misses, Drake London just didn't go the way we wanted it to. I was really surprised. With Kyle Pitts being ruled out, I expected double-digit targets for him. Even though Marcus Mariota's been struggling, thought that one would work out. It didn't. And then Brandon Cooks in what was probably the odd game of the week here with both Jacksonville and Houston. I think everyone in fantasy across the board, except for Dameon Pierce, sucked in those games. ETN had himself an okay game as well at about 12.5 points in half PPR. So very weird situation for Cooks there. Again, disappointed in Drake London, but we try to get you some of those flex level players that could come out there and pop for us in this week's games. Now, breaking down the start of today's episode, I've got Chris Godwin at Pittsburgh for this week's matchup. I'm feeling confident in Chris Godwin to finally have his breakout game of the season here in Week 6. Now, he seems to be fully healthy post-hamstring issue. Of course, he had the ACL coming into the year, and then Week 1 tweaks his hammy. Now, we're 2 weeks removed from the hamstring recurrence, or not the recurrence, but the return of Godwin from that hamstring. In those 2 games, he's totaled 13 receptions for 120 yards, again, since Week 4 when he was able to come back here. Now, hopefully this is the week where he takes the plunge, is able to go out and have some nice ceiling numbers for us. I think the floor is able to be had here, just given the fact that he has been consistently, over the past 2 seasons, Tom Brady's preferred target underneath. He separates quickly off the line of scrimmage and is a reliable possession receiver for this team in that big slot role for this offense. So taking on a Pittsburgh secondary that's pretty sorry right now. These guys are getting burned left and right. Like, without TJ Watt rushing the passer and putting the quarterback under duress, they've been getting flamed back there. And this is a situation again this week. No TJ Watt. You've got Tom Brady. He'll be sitting pretty back there in the pocket, delivering passes unhurried. And I think that's just a good recipe for success here for Chris Godwin in pass catchers of Tampa Bay for this Week 6 game. Now, in back-to-back games here since returning from that hamstring issue, Godwin's had 9 points or more in fantasy scoring, but hasn't cracked the double-digit marker. I think this is the game he finally takes that plunge here and elevates himself into a lineup-worthy role. Next up here, let's dive into Tyler Lockett taking on the Arizona Cardinals at home here. Now, fresh off of a 7-point heartbreaking loss, but a game in which, yet again, the Seattle Seahawks offense proved to be a fantasy-friendly football team. Now, very unexpected stuff. I actually had Tyler as a bust heading into this season. However, Geno Smith's play, the offensive line play, it's all kind of worked out here and gotten the numbers done at the end of the day for Lockett. Now, heading into this Arizona Cardinals matchup, just quickly taking a glance back at what Arizona did this past week, we saw the smaller, quicker wide receiver in Devontae Devontae Smith, who translates better into Tyler Lockett's skill set than DK Metcalf does per se, had himself the best day of these Philadelphia pass catchers. He was the higher volume target, the guy they used to exploit this defense, and A.J. Brown across the field, who I think is a bit more of a comparison to a DK Metcalf here, had the quieter day of the two. Now, Tyler's been a phenomenal volume receiver for the Seahawks team throughout this season to this point, something I didn't necessarily expect to be the case. I thought they're going to be throwing the ball up downfield and looking to make plays in the passing game. I thought it'd be a very run-centric offense, but I thought, DK would handle the majority of those bigger play opportunities. But it's been Tyler Lockett kind of changing his role on this football team post Russell Wilson to really accommodate Geno Smith's skill set here as a player with 10 or more points in 80% of his fantasy contests, 4 straight games here dating back to week 2. So if you take a look at it, he's had 8 or more targets in 3 out of the 5 games and only has 1 touchdown on the season, proving that volume in these PPR leagues is getting the job done for him. Now, he doesn't have the biggest ceiling in the world now. I believe he had one of his career games back in the day against this Arizona team, having a monstrous day. I think it was like 3 receiving touchdowns and just a hellacious amount of yards under Russell Wilson. So maybe he can, bring some of that back here and torment this Cardinals back end. But for me, this is a lot more about a more established and safer floor than expected with a capable playmaker after the catch as well. And of course, he can stretch the field if given those opportunities. So loving what I'm seeing here from Tyler Lockett throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. I think he continues that streak here in week 6 and puts up another quality fantasy day. Gabe Davis now taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this was our absolutely abysmal miss last week in the sits category. I underestimated the health of his ankle. I thought that the game script, despite the fact that Buffalo won by 35 points, I thought that, hey, they would maybe struggle a little bit to get the receivers involved. Gabe Davis being let me back up a step here. Gabe Davis being a lower target threat for this Buffalo offense had me a little bit skeptical, because if they were blowing this team out early and those targets just weren't coming in the second half, that was a problem. However, I failed to understand that of his 3 catches, 2 of them would equate to have 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. So like Randy Moss level stuff last week. Now, of course, the reason we love him in this matchup is because talking through some game script action here with the numbers at our fingertips based off of the Vegas sportsbooks for the week. If you're wondering, if you're new around here, of course, why I talk through this stuff, it's very indicative at times of how games should go here, the ways that, the wise guys are expecting these games to unfold in matchups for the week. So the key number here is 54, that being the fact that this is the highest over or under points total of any game this week. Kansas City Buffalo is expected to be a shootout. They're just expecting a lot of points to be hung on the board, and we want Gabe Davis' share of that pie here. So 54, of course, being the collective amount of points between these two teams. It is the highest by 8 over a touchdown over any other game in the week 6 slate. So important stuff to look at there when they're expecting that many points, and with these 2 quarterbacks in the field, it's going to be a fireworks show here. So we want our part in the Gabe Davis market for week 6 fantasy football. Of course, if you remember the last time we saw these 2 teams square off, it was 8 catches, 201 yards, and a NFL playoff record 4 touchdown receptions in the AFC divisional round matchup between these 2 teams. So Davis absolutely cooked these guys last time out. He's an elite vertical weapon again. The ankle looks entirely healthy. He's finally cutting right and being able to stretch the field. That's how he got those 2 monster touchdown grabs. And this team also has Stephon Diggs. So the Chiefs really have to pick their poison here. Guess what? We just saw Devontae Adams cook him deep twice on just a handful of targets in week 5 on Monday Night Football. Kansas City's got a short week here. It's only a day short, but still worth noting. So Gabe Davis can definitely win deep again this week. He's going to be seeing second-tier coverage because, again, Stephon Diggs warrants a lot of respect and attention from this team. And I think the ceiling, of course, can reach very, very good limits in this game. I'd be shocked to see anyone disagree with this take here in this matchup. He's not going to do the same things he did in that divisional round game, but could have another monstrous performance. Christian Kirk here at Indianapolis, another matchup I like. I'm not ready to bail or sell my stock of Christian Kirk here. He's coming off his 2 worst weeks of the season, this past week being the rock bottom metric here. 3 targets, 1 reception, 11 yards. Poor play, poor production there. But look, I think that for a guy who, again, 7 points against Philadelphia, that being the second game ago, 1.6 points this past week versus Houston, he's due for a bounce-back game here. And this is a matchup where, kind of oddly enough, it is week 6 only, but this is the second game between the Colts and the the Jaguars this year. So these teams will not meet again this season after this week 6 matchup. However, this time we are in Indianapolis, but the first time in week 2 that they squared off, Christian Kirk caught 6 of his 6 passes for a 100% catch rate, 78 yards, and 2 touchdown receptions. Now, he might have some regression from that game. What I'm hoping is the targets can go up here, the yards can stay constant. Maybe instead of 2 touchdowns, he scores 1. Nonetheless, I think that the floor will go up here. The Jags offense has to bounce back in terms of just having the ability to put points up on the table, and they cannot have another low-scoring defensive affair that's just a field goal fest here. And I don't think that'll be the case again because they really are. It's like, there's nothing really analytical behind this side of the approach here, but the fact of the matter is that you've got a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, an offense that looked phenomenal the first 3 weeks of the season, and now they've regressed so hard. Like, they're due for a bounce back and just having kind of a reset of the market here. So maybe Christian Kirk isn't nearly as elite as we thought he was throughout the first portion of the season. Still a very, very good player here, though, and a matchup that I think he will have success against here and get himself back into a positive mindset, or in terms of how we view him as a fantasy community. And then Marquise Brown here at Seattle on the road. This one is just kind of a enjoy your last week of Hollywood Brown putting up wide receiver 1 numbers. He's the PPR wide receiver 6 right now, and this is the last week before DeAndre Hopkins comes back into this offense, and we might see a little bit of a shakeup in terms of the pecking order for this pass-catching offense in Arizona. Now, Marquise will still be very fantasy relevant, and I really don't want to talk too much about week 7 and beyond here, but Hollywood this week is a fantastic play. Seattle's defense right now is the second worst scoring defense behind Detroit in the National Football League, so letting a high volume of points be scored on them. And you've got a guy who just extended his double-digit target streak to 4 weeks in a row. So elite volume is heading the direction of Hollywood Brown here. Additionally, he's coming off of 17 points or more in 17 straight games. That's via half PPR scoring. So every box is being checked here. You're going to continue getting opportunities, deep balls, underneath stuff. His run after catch touchdown against Philly in week 5 was phenomenal. Lots of stuff brought to the table here from Hollywood that I love to see. So if you guys enjoyed today's episode, smash that like button to recap Chris Godwin at Pittsburgh, Tyler Lockett versus the Cardinals here, Gabe Davis at Kansas City in Arrowhead Stadium, Christian Kirk at Indianapolis, and Hollywood Brown at Seattle. Lots of road teams this week that we're starting here, but I do think things will work out here this week, and I do like the picks for this week's game. So there you have it. 5 wide receivers to start here in week 6 fantasy football. If you enjoyed, again, smash the like button, subscribe, check out some of the stuff, the links in the description in today's episode, and let me know your start and sit questions in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.